have to have walked in with a pretty clear vision of the beginning, the middle, and the end, and all of the exigencies of the plot, the things that are supposed to happen and not supposed to happen, the moments of surprise, you know, all of those tipping points, the character moments where some choice reveals some important thing, right? ARIS is excellent at doing that, even if you happen to be, say, sediment or magma. You know, you have these choices that in them, do you want to melt? Do you want to you can make them sound very dramatic, especially if you want to melt. It involves walking from the 3rd floor back down to the 1st floor. You have to go back to the mantle, sorry. You know, and then you want to, you know, crystallize back to the 2nd floor. So those involve real decisions and potentially real costs and stuff like that. And my idea was that kids would walk into that with, like, we're going to do the rock cycle, or we're going to do an event that we have a template for. For example, the Nepal earthquake happened the first weekend of this unit, and the Cabilco volcano in Chile happened the first weekend of this unit. I mean, you could not ask for worse timing for anybody.
Yeah.
But that said, it made this unit very relevant. I have 2 thoughts about it. Are, you know, instructionally how I do this. I'd put it out there as a 5E model, like the engage, explore, explain, elaborate, and evaluate. It's a pretty standard model to design an instructional unit that's, you know, relatively short. In your engage part of the unit, let's say it's the geology, geography thing, you give the kids an ARIS. Let's go on the basic assumption everybody's doing this thing, all right? And we're making it global rather than some choice. In the engage, everybody does an ARIS, right? And the ARIS that they do is both instructional in the sense that it shows all of the different types of pieces that the game can pull off, and also it's gamified in the sense that it shows splitting narratives and some choices that you have to make. So it really puts a high level of meaning to ARIS, rather than that sort of scratching the surface museum walk. As you explore and explain, that's really around the content. All right. The elaborate asks you to take your ARIS experience and the content exploration and explanation, which is like exploration is classically like some labs, some inquiry-based stuff. Explanation would be like PowerPoints and some other kinds of readings, you know. And then in the elaboration, that's when you've got kids who are writing the narrative. They're taking what they've got and creating the human story, and they've created not just a narrative, but something that in the context of this unit that both involves the information that we've set out, the rubricable information, and some kind of a thing that, thinking back to the engaging ARIS experience, that they can gamify. What are the choices? What are the elements of decision that you have to make that make it exciting? And then, you know, your evaluation is walking through it, you know. And that's as authentic as it gets. Does the darn thing work? When it works, does it contain the information? And are you required to, either through, you know, data entry or whatever, are you required to use that information in a way that is really meaningful? And then I don't have to grade anything. I mean, it grades itself functioning. And you'd have to accept that some groups are really going to go with a very 1, 2, 3, 4 linear kind of model, and that's okay because the resources that I need to either develop, find, or commission would be that taxonomy card, which will necessarily become obsolete, but, you know, if it were available, it would help refer kids to different possibilities. And then the idea of like a benchmark ARIS, like that takes you through in a very simple way. They talk about, like, they have one example of getting a job. Right? And that's a pretty easy one. I feel like something like that for school might be interesting. You know, your first day of school ARIS. That might be kind of compelling because that's an experience that they already understand. And the emotion would be there. When we do it this coming winter as a whole team, I think my stipulation would be that you have to define your audience, and one of my goals would be any group of kids hooks up with a class over at Union and then relates whatever this content is, and it might be, I don't know exactly what it's going to be, I'm not sure yet. It might be about population in Africa, that's just my best guess right now. And sets it up as a game for a class of younger kids to play in groups of whatever, and, you know, you got, you know, we take like 8 or 10 iPads over the class, and you go over, your group goes over the class, and you help them work their way through it. So simultaneously, the content you're digesting and learning has to be reworded and rewritten for a different audience, which means that you own it more. The audience is a younger audience, so you get around some comprehension issues, so you make it so you can, and then the shareability is very authentic. It's not like, yeah, we can do it for each other, but then it's very easy to just treat each other like we've always treated each other. But here, these are real living people, and they don't know you, and they're trusting you, and so this is a wholly different dynamic, and that's very powerful.